like to call to order the planning board meeting. And Sharon, you go ahead and start us off with the roll call, please. Introduce yourself.
Sharon Clark.
Mike Goodwin.
Greg Morgan.
Doug Buchanan.
Phil Thomas.
Fred Rogers.
All right. So that is our call.
We're gonna try to get out of here in an hour, so talk fast.
No, we'll be here as long as we need to. I guess the first order of business is animals, how to regulate them. And Mr. Humphrey and Teresa, you guys put together probably the information for us. So Mr. Humphrey, I'm gonna turn everything over to you.
At our last meeting, we talked a little bit about animals, and I guess to a planner in trying to write an ordinance, that's the one he fears the most, because of the complexity of it. You can make it as plain as you want to, or as non-existent as you want to, and everybody has an animal, almost everybody. Some of them sleep with their animals even, or, have them ride in the car with them and all that stuff. Anyway, so we talked about them, and as I went over my code enforcement issues, it came up, and the question came up, how do we regulate them, and are we regulating animals the way we want to, or how we want to? So I decided to have a discussion on how do we regulate them. I found, well, first we'll go over what we have, and basically we have 5 ways you can become a farm, and they're listed on page 3. I think, Josh, you were approved, were you not, as a bona fide farm with Union County? So remember, a bona fide farm is a tax classification with the county. You can be a farm other ways, like Greg is a farm through the Department of Agriculture, right?
U.S. Department of Agriculture.
So there's different ways you can be a farmer, and that has to do with, you can raise trees, or Christmas trees, or you could raise a lot of things to be a farmer. But here, when I use the term bona fide farm, it means bona fide with the county. And that's what our ordinance classifies or states. If you're a bona fide farm, then we take that in consideration in our ordinance. Okay? But it's a tax classification, it's not a zoning classification. Okay. Am I all right with that? One of the main things, and we had in our code enforcement thing, was on page number 4, section 175, about the 150 feet away from property lines. We have been using this for some time. It has never been a problem. We've got some that want that a lot shorter, 150 feet to be 50 feet, and some wanting to be 300 feet. Well, if you had 300 feet, most lots wouldn't qualify to have animals, because they're not wide enough. That's 300 feet from every property line. So it is 150 feet. And that's pretty consistent with what we found with other towns also. Okay, page 6. I thought the American Planning Association had a great paragraph. I'll read it. The benefits of urban livestock include the production of fresh local food products such as eggs, honey, and milk, the important pollination roles played by bees, and the championship and educational aspects of keeping such animals as pets. However, potential downsides include noise, odor, disease concerns, so appropriate regulations are important to protect communities from nuisance or public health complaints. I thought that was well put. Okay. After that, pages 7, 8, 9, and 10 are examples of other towns in Union County and what their regulations are. One I will highlight is for Josh. Let's see here. Oh, page 9 in Wingate. A minimum of 10,000 square feet per animal raised is required. That's on swine. So if you had one pig, you'd have to have at least 10,000 square feet of property for that particular animal. What that does, it limits a person who has an acre.
Four pigs an acre.
What? No, it didn't say that. Well,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
There's 40,000 roughly.
But there's some,
43,000, 560.
there's some
I said, right, I
regulation.
said, right.
There's some regulation. It's, most acre lots don't raise pigs, usually, I would think. Interesting though, agricultural, this is in Unionville, about the same as ours. Agricultural uses are exempt as bona fide farms, including livestock, horses, and poultry. But they have to have a minimum of 10 acres. So they're allowed, they limit their growing of things or having animals to 10 acres. Now, I don't really know. Let me read that again. Agricultural uses not exempt by farms, including livestock, horses, poultry, i.e. turkeys, chickens, ducks, geese, ostriches, and all that domestic fowl, hog, and rabbit meat production centers on 10-acre minimum tracts. Interesting. I didn't know that.
All those classifications you went over at the beginning there.
Mhm.
What's the acreage? Is there an acreage limit to each one?
In Union County, it's 10 acres. In Union County, for a bona fide farm. Agricultural department. Yeah.
And Josh's.
What's your minimum, Greg? Is there a
10,000
minimum?
gross sales, North Carolina Department of Revenue.
The acreage.
I'll tell you why that is. Well, there's a couple of reasons. I don't agree with the $10,000 rule for North Carolina Department of Revenue. See the here and there, it eliminates the rule down, stretches to the big ag. But the problem is you have multiple acres or multiple parcels. For instance, for me, if you count all acreage I use, it's probably 15 acres, but I use a lot of family land, and I can't dedicate their land as tax exempt through the county. That classification for tax exempt that he's referring to is, or register with Union County government, is for
One parcel.
one parcel exempt from property tax. It's a farm use tax. So basically, if your property, a tax value on your property would require you to pay $3,000 a year in property tax, if you list it as agricultural use with Union County, that goes away. Long story short.
Now, with land, with farming, crop, you gotta make $3,000 per acre for 3 years or something.
North Carolina Department of Agriculture says any farm that produces $10,000 of gross income to the farm is
It
exempt.
used to be a lower number.
Yeah.
It is now bumped up to 10,000.
That rule change happened in 2015.
Three.
Yeah, here in 2015, they changed the rule with the state Department of Revenue. It stated that any farm must produce $10,000 of gross income to be considered a farm, a bona fide farm, for tax purposes, for the sales tax exemption, for the sales tax exemption. Now, we use that sales tax exemption as certifying us as a bona fide farm. If that makes sense.
That's one of the 5 options.
Right.
Josh, that's almost right on the bona fide farm. His particular tax they defer taxes, they say defer them. They don't eliminate them completely, but they defer them. And when he sells that property, he's got to go back and recoup 3 years of that, or they make him go back and recoup 3 years of value and pay the taxes on that when he sells the property. If he keeps it 100 years, though, he's probably made money in the deal.
Josh would be more familiar, or True as well, because I don't go to the farm program in Union County. I'm registered in the North Carolina Department of Agriculture, as well as the U.S. Department of Agriculture as a apprentice ID. But I have multiple parcels that I can't do that.
With him, he can have several parcels and still be under the same road.
Gotcha.
As well as, could he not lease that from the other people?
It would have to be under the North Carolina rules. I don't
It
know.
got so dang confused and I didn't even.
Okay.
Greg and his land's tied up in a trust. There's 5 siblings, in a messy situation, but yeah.
I got one piece that's in the farm program, got well over 10 acres. Another piece has got 18, and I gotta cut some trees down to get farm, but I thought I would just have to get $3,000 an acre, but now I gotta get to.
Yours
Well, your gross
It's
is
mine is,
2,000.
yeah, I'm 15.
No, I mean, to get on the program, did you have to produce how many, $1,000 a year?
I didn't do that. I did the last one on there.
Yeah, but don't, you- huh? You didn't do the last?
It is a federal.
Okay. The county is $1,000 a year, I think, yeah. Of course, it was. They may have changed that.
It's 1,000 or 10 acres. You can be exempt.
Has to have 10 acres.
Mhm.
I'm worried about I think it's $1,000 you have to show you produced on the 10 acres. Correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's right. Anyway,
I have a comment or a question about the basic definitions with all the research that y'all did and compiled for us. Everybody wasn't outlining the same uses and definitions, starting with Fairview. Just noticed that we do have llamas, but we don't have ostriches. I don't know if there are any in the county or in the town that are being raised, but I have seen them before. But then in some of the other cities, or towns, they were talking about, or making a comment and a definition about aquatic life and aquatic aquaculture.
could there be a fish
Things that
farm?
we have had left out of ours. So how do we need to be all inclusive, or what if one day somebody wants to come forward and produce a koi pond?
As times change, I think you can add,
You'll have to add.
you know, we don't have a fish farm, but there are fish farms that raise fish.
Right.
And that's a commercial operation. Just like we have turkey farms, chicken farms, whatever. We're trying to talk about animals that should be regulated or shouldn't be regulated. And usually the farm, we don't worry about it. It's the rest of it.
So, I guess because of the different state, federal, county regulations, you have a hard time regulating.
Great.
In my opinion, what makes Fairview unique of any other town in the county is that we encourage small farms. We encourage young generation to be able to explore and create opportunities for agribusiness, for any type of agriculture. To regulate this, in my opinion, is a waste of time. We have a nuisance ordinance. If an animal becomes a nuisance, then you fall up under the nuisance ordinance. It's just my opinion, we ought not be regulating animals like in general. Now, if you got 5 hogs on a 1/4 acre lot, a 1 acre lot, and the neighbor is tired of smelling it, well, then that's a nuisance. You all right?
Unless you have a livestock or animal ordinance of some kind that regulates it, yes.
So, it's in my opinion, we ought not be regulating animals in general. I mean, just, why regulate?
What I see with that is that you can't regulate nuisance. You know, it's not regulated. I mean, it's in the book,
Nuisance to you may not be nuisance to somebody else.
and if you look at the nuisance ordinance, I know we're gonna do that in a minute, but, you know,
Let's stay to animals right now. He makes a good point. Should we, and that's the first question on my page 12, what animals should be regulated, if any? What animals should be regulated, if any? Now, I'm talking about 10 acres or less. Or should we have and that's another question. Is there an acre requirement on such animals?
So let me put it
Now,
this way.
we regulate horses like that. General rule is 1 horse per acre.
So let me throw this out there. Domesticated versus non-domesticated, that impacts your health. Because you can't regulate those animals. They're feral or non-feral.
So it's wild.
Pretty much. I heard a story.
Wild animal is another classification altogether, isn't it?
Well,
I mean,
I
cats are
don't
wild.
know. But I mean, you know, I heard a story earlier today, a guy raised a baby deer, right? And now they're raising deer for meat. I heard that. Farms are picking up that, depending on what part of the country you're in. But those deers will be classified as domestic because they're farm raised. So my point is, I wouldn't regulate animals in the zone. I create it as a nuisance. As it becomes a nuisance, to your point, I don't know how you deal with nuisances.
Yeah.
I don't, but
Any other comment? That's a good comment.
I think you got the reverse. If you got, and I've actually seen this, a homeowner that sets a horse up in a forest, essentially, not a pasture. And it was maybe a quarter of an acre itself, and no shelter, no nothing else. How, to me, that's inhumane.
so,
And it's, I mean, I want to set things in place so that we have the teeth for somebody that's doing something that's not beneficial or humane to the animal.
so that's a matter of opinion of in my opinion, it's a matter of the health of that animal. It's not, as a planner, it's a matter of opinion.
Sure.
If it's a cruelty issue, then the animal shelter in Union County regulates that. I mean, there are rules in place that the Union County Sheriff's Office handles those complaints. If there's a complaint of the welfare of an animal services go out and look at it. I've seen opinions to where, you know, we raise pigs and baby pigs are awful pretty, but, you know, we put shelters and mobile hutches up, and they'd soon have their babies out in the woods or in the field. And my neighbor may look across the fence and say, that's just inhumane, but it's livestock and it's their natural habitat. Now, I don't know horses. I've had a horse and I don't have one of them, but you know, cattle, silver pastures is a new thing where you're raising cattle in woodlands instead of pasture, which what they do is they run pigs through the woods to clear them out. They plant rye behind it, and they run their cattle or their horses into the woods. As long as they got grass to eat and hay, they're fine. I mean, I think if we're talking about a cruelty, welfare of the animal, I'll let the Union County Sheriff's Office handle that type of complaint. I'm just very weary of regulating any animal. I think it discourages agricultural startups. I think we need to do everything we can to encourage the next generation of farmers to be farmers. And if we're sitting here regulating how many cows or pigs we're gonna have on so many acres, I think it's a waste of time and overreach. That's just my opinion.
the other issue to come up is property values. You know, if you got all these horses and pigs and house and goes there, what's the neighbor, is his price gonna go down? Is he gonna try to get a lower price on his mortgage? And then the appraiser comes out there and values the property because of the neighborhood.
That happens.
Are we judge of what the ordinance is gonna do, the property values? We're not supposed
I
to.
think that, again, I think that's covered in the nuisance. Again, I don't know how to regulate the nuisance ordinance, maybe y'all can tell me, but it states right there in that nuisance having its emotional stability because of a decreased property value or unsightly and decreased livability of neighborhood.
Let's hold off on that just a minute. Let me go through my questions, even though you've about solved all my questions, but let's go over them anyway. Greg said they shouldn't be animals shouldn't be regulated. I have a different opinion is under 10 acres, I think they should be to some point. Whatever's best for the town, I think they should be, but that's my opinion. Greg's got his. Any more opinions?
I agree with your opinion, Ed, that there needs to be some regulation because not everybody has 10, 20, 30 acres to accommodate the education and the welfare of being a farmer. I have no problem with all of that being part of our community. It is our community. But there are lots of folks here now who aren't a part of that economy, and you need to regulate those who might say, well, my 5 acres is just fine for 5 pigs, and pigs are gonna have piglets real fast. And my rabbits, I'm gonna have them, my chickens, and I live next door to somebody else who has 5 acres. There needs to be some regulation about how many acres and how many animals before everybody has a free-for-all. I think there needs to be some guideline, because we're not all farmers.
How many acres should be allowed on a property?
I mean, what?
Acres, how many animals should be allowed on property? I mean, is there a relationship with size of property and how many animals?
So that is a very loaded question.
What are you gonna do about these people now with all these chicken coops?
Okay, so let me go back to, thank you for bringing that up, because it reminds me of the chicken tractor. One of the new forms of farm-to-table agriculture is raising 50 chickens in a 10x10 tractor, and it's moved every day. It fertilizes the grass, blah, blah, blah. However, it takes to get a meat bird, 8 weeks is the amount of land you're gonna need. But that's 50 chickens in 100 square feet.
Yeah, somebody might say that's not humane.
That's right.
What are you gonna do then?
Wouldn't be free range, would it?
So turn loose in my yard, I'll have me some fried.
Yeah. It's just a very slippery slope. And the 10 acre rule, how you gonna, I'm not saying I disagree with that, but I do disagree with it because I think when you deal with multiple parcels of property, I don't know how you want me to tell you, Joe, let me use his 5 acres and Sue, let me borrow her 3 acres as long as I keep her yard mowed. I don't know how to do that.
Well, that's property, ownership of property. I said, how many animals should you keep on your property or on any property?
If your 5 acres, you lease to me to raise 3 cows on.
And that's done every day. The
Does
farmers
she-
lease property
Is
to
she in
farmers.
violation of your rule
If it's her property, yeah.
now? Okay,
If I say she can't keep but 5 chickens on her piece of property, then she's in
I
violation,
think,
not
I
you.
think it's an overreaching.
That's
opinion.
that we don't have that, but the farming community is big here where a farmer doesn't necessarily farm his property. He will lease his property to a businessman who farms the property. We have that all over Fairview. Okay, where should animals be kept? Is there a special, other than horses, what other structures would be necessary to raise animals? Chicken coops?
Well, when you're talking about the 150-foot boundaries on properties, I don't know for sure what folks are using, but I would think that necessitates some kind of fencing so that they don't wander beyond the 150 feet, depending on what kind of animal we're talking about.
Well, the problem is the animals get out. and,
Chickens get
you know,
out.
Your property,
No matter if you got a
that's
fence.
what causes the problem.
But again, it goes back to nuisance, that's
Yeah,
right.
you're right. The size of an animal will be a factor.
I don't think.
Who wants, if I want an elephant, should that be a problem?
It's not.
That's against the law.
I don't think
It's exotic.
the size of the animal should be regulated. I mean, you've got,
Giraffe.
small animal versus, large animal.
Well, I think we're talking about livestock and in your house, too. Domesticated
And-
livestock.
Right, I think that's a real key.
Yeah.
Domesticated, we're not gonna try.
We're not gonna do that inside your home, bless your heart. You have any kind of animal you want, I guess.
Well, pretty sure on farm animals are domesticated as well.
Shelter should be required on certain animals and not. Should chickens, have coops or be required to have coops? I don't know anything about raising chickens, so.
For free range.
This is just questions. How large, should your lot be in acres? And we've talked about 10 acres or less than 10. How far from property lines? Heard one comment today, they ought to be 300 feet.
It would be 10 foot.
I heard 300, he says 10. Is there a compromise or?
Well, what about if we just go back to the setback line? That would be 14 feet on the side,
80, 50.
15
15, yeah.
or your residential R4.
and 40.
40.
all that.
Well, then I could be 15 feet from my neighbor's line. Is
See,
that what you're saying?
What, on the sides, and I think the frontage is 40 feet,
Yeah, but
and don't remember what the back is, it's either 15 or 40.
I don't usually have animals in my front yard.
I got
To
two.
bother your front yard, well, except Greg, he would have animals.
I literally,
Or-
I've got 2 cows in my front yard.
Or heaven forbid,
It's
Josh, you know.
It's not a big deal.
Yeah. The other farmers up there. you know.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with, a farmer having animals in his front yard.
But somebody who lives next door to a farm, who doesn't have that kind of acreage, or that kind of economy going on.
But you don't regulate.
But then they'll buy out there,
But a farm is 10 acres or more,
right?
unless it's.
Then what we're talking about is regulating something that's not a farm,
know-
right?
That's right. But, yes, we're talking about regulating something that's not farm. But I proposed to the entire group, the farm is the nuisance. We're not going to have, when I say the farm's the nuisance, the farm's not the nuisance. But if you're within 10 foot of a chicken house, it's a nuisance. We're not even talking about the chicken houses or agriculture. We're talking about backyard farming. It's basically what we're talking about.
Or animals that you may have. If Bill has got if Bill's got 3 German Shepherds that are dangerous, should they be fenced?
It's a nuisance. It's animal control. It's safety of somebody's health. So you take 150 acres off that property line. You're telling me I gotta have 10 acres to be a farm, and I've got 9 acres, and now you're telling me you gotta set me back 100 feet.
The farms exempt.
No. I'm saying if I'm not a farm, and I'm under 10 acres.
Right.
And I've got a setback of 150 feet.
On all property.
So you do the math on the 150 footage, you just eliminated half of my property where I can explore agricultural
Right,
options.
exactly right.
So I
And
mean,
how if I got somebody in town that wants 300? So,
I don't see how we can regulate it. If it's humane or non-humane, that's the sheriff's office. We have a nuisance ordinance. And I don't know how in the world to deal with the nuisance, but I just don't think we're.
okay, if I said, well, let's go to the nuisance ordinance.
Did we get all your,
10 foot, that's what.
I didn't get anything answered or clear about, it may be that we, for the time being, just be thinking about it and leaving it well enough alone right now, and not changing anything. I think we have it broad enough to where it can be interpreted. And that's if Greg comes to me and he wants to do something and I say he can't do it, he's got an appeal process and he can go over my head, you know. And that's the way it should be. If I say you're within 150 feet and he goes over that, there's an appeal process. Well, I don't like 150 feet. They can appeal it. So the ordinance is pretty open. I'm pretty open. If anybody's young enough in here, if Spencer wants to have, and she does, have chickens and mules in her yard,
They're not doing good right now.
that's, and she can handle them, and it doesn't bother anybody and whatever, we tend to not be concerned about it.
Yeah.
If it becomes a nuisance, then that's when we get concerned about it. Let's change and go to nuisance a minute. This ordinance, you don't have really any say-so in, other than petitioning your council to approve or disapprove. But I thought it was important to get your opinion on it anyway, because we need to change our ordinance. The other day, the council did agree to hire a firm who specializes in code enforcement. So I've got a person now I can call. You limit those calls because they're kind of expensive to do code enforcement as it's supposed to be done under your ordinance. Knowing when to do what, you know, you do this first, you do this, you can do this. This is out of your ordinance, or this is not included in your ordinance, or you can't do this, or you can't regulate this, whatever. So we've hired a firm to help, and they've already been a big help in knowing. I wouldn't have known to do what they've already done, you know, in the correct way. So it came up that the code enforcer thought our ordinance needed to be revised a little bit. And this is what we came up with. We plagiarized a little bit and added to. It just so happened that the code enforcer we're using wrote the ordinance that I use as an example. So he's pretty familiar with that too. We've also got our attorney to weigh in on it, and she likes it too. So, but it's one of these catch-all things. If you read it, it seemed like it was repeating itself over and over again to make sure we caught everything in every situation. You need, who said you needed something? You need some kind of ordinance if you're going to, excuse me. If you're going to regulate anything, you need an ordinance to make it clear what you're trying to regulate. Nuisance is one of those things that's sort of a catch-all. You throw everything into, oh, well, it's a nuisance. Well, what's a nuisance? I think it's fairly clear. Whatever bothers you that somebody else is doing is a nuisance, probably, simply stated. But anything you see in this ordinance, this draft ordinance that you like or dislike, if you had time to read it.
I had one comment about the current ordinance on page 6. Starting on 14, but in there, on number 9 on page 16 indicates a nuisance currently referring to motorized vehicles and their how loud they are. I don't know what the history of that particular ordinance was, except maybe a complaint or two came through. I thought it was kind of odd that it said it applied only to subdivisions with lots under 10 acres in size. Why would that be? That's my first question concerning that, because I noticed in the draft that particular item has been eliminated. And I didn't know if it was eliminated or was not carried over because it could be covered under a noise ordinance, which we have.
That's probably why we did that. The difference between nuisance and noise. Noise is a measurable nuisance with a meter, decibel meter. You don't have one, we don't enforce it like that, but that's the reason you have the difference in noise and nuisance. That's something you can put your finger on. If I can hear it and it's a certain decibel point, it might be a nuisance, and we can regulate that.
Well, if at midnight, somebody decides to run their truck up and down our street and does it several nights in a row, that's an intentional, it's just not something that is passing by occasionally, it's intentional. And that's why I thought it was interesting that that came up in our current nuisance ordinance and then was omitted from the other. And yet it is something that's real.
I would classify that if I was trying to regulate that, I would say noise would be easier to regulate.
So we're going to do the noise ordinance
Mhm.
rather than the
Mhm.
nuisance, okay.
Thank you for sharing the nuisance ordinance with the group. I had not, I like the new nuisance ordinance. Refresh for the general public here. The nuisance is handled, approved by the county, town council.
That's correct.
So if you get a phone call that says, these pigs stink, or they're shooting guns off next to my house, what do you do?
I think, oh my goodness, what am I going to do about this? That's what I
So
say.
play that out.
It depends on what it is. If it's, and guns is a good one. Our nation has a problem. Well, I think our nation has a problem with guns. Problem meaning, we probably have too many, but we've been raised to have guns. You know, I used to watch Cowboys and Indians. Every cowboy had a gun.
Wait. Too many guns.
We get too political now.
But guns here are normal. In my neighborhood, they're not normal.
Gotcha.
Urbanized guns are different than rural guns, okay?
Good.
People here like to go out in the backyard and shoot, or the back deck and shoot. I can't go out in my backyard and shoot, I'll hit something, you know. Noise is not a problem usually to that particular person. Just like the young people and their mufflers on their trucks and cars. Noise is not a problem to them. It is to us, but it isn't to them. So what I try to do is I try to take this situation of the complaint and say, okay, let's analyze it, say what the complaint is, and what would be the easiest way to solve that complaint. Neighbors don't usually talk to neighbors, although the livestock situation over on West Duncan that I told you about last month is now worked out. The neighbors are getting along and everything's fine. Now, one is not complaining so much, and one is not raising so much animals either. So it's a happy marriage now. But neighbors don't talk to neighbors. So I try to find out, number one, how close are you? And do you know your neighbor? Well, no. Have you ever talked to your neighbor about what your concerns are? Well, no. Well, do you think it might be a good idea? No. You know, they want government to do it for them. I may call a neighbor and say, listen, I've got a complaint, a valid complaint here about noise, because that would come under noise probably, about shooting of guns at 3 o'clock in the morning. They think that's probably not fair. And I may use my terminology, not fair to the neighborhood or because they've got a young child, whatever. What do you think? And they may tell me, hey, go to wherever and hang up. Or they might say, I'm sorry, I didn't know I was causing a problem. It could be anything. But if I can work it out by a phone call or a letter, or a combination of things, I try to do that. But in every situation is a little bit different because of who owns the property, who the people are they cooperative people or not? Do I know the father and mother, or anything I can use to solve the problem. And a lot of people will say it's a nuisance when it really isn't one.
Right.
Or it bothers them, but, well, he shot one time. Well, one time maybe bothersome to you, it woke you up. But it's not a firing range.
So when does the rubber meet the road and action happens? And what is that action?
When I can't work it out. I can't work out the problem. And by the ordinance, one is in violation.
Okay.
We send a letter stating to that person that is in violation of a certain clause in the ordinance. And that we would like for them to remedy that that violation in a certain number of days. If they do that, then it's fine. If they don't, we go to the next step. We start fining that particular person for doing, being in violation. If they still don't do it, and we had a violation here a couple of years ago, got up to $50,000. We're not going to collect $50,000 from somebody. It was valid. So valid. We settled for a sum of money. But then I come to the council and I say, council, I've got this problem. We've done everything we can. We can't solve this problem. I'd like permission to take it to court. Never judged it. Then we hire the attorney, get the attorney to take it to court.
So I'm gonna share one example. And I know y'all tired of hearing me talk, but I'm gonna share one example about our neighbor, one of our neighbors. Never had a problem with it, grew up around it, wasn't a big deal. New person moves into the neighborhood. And my next door neighbor raised horses. But he trained them on how to not react to a gunfire. He did rodeos, so on and so forth. Neighbor buys property next to him. Well, he don't like hearing all the gunshots going on. So what does he do about it? When he calls, they head out.
Yeah, I
Long story.
remember that one.
Yep. Well, he's a bona fide farmer. Ain't nothing you can do about it. Am I right?
Here again, you can be a farm and be a nuisance.
Okay, thank you for saying that. That's where I'm at. Whether it's a farm or non-farm, 10 acres, not 10 acres. We have a nuisance ordinance. That is the heavy hand if needed. If there's too many pigs, too many chickens, too many cows, or whatever, let it be handled under the nuisance. I don't think we'll be regulating animals. The other point I would like to share is if you're not in the town of Fairview and you're in the unincorporated area in Union County, the gunfire goes off at 3 o'clock in the morning. What do those people do?
Oh,
They
sure.
call exactly what you do, call 911.
Okay, so why do we expect the town to regulate something when it ought not be regulated anyway? That's just my opinion. Why? I posed the question, why? Because as a planning board, there's certain things we want to see happen in the town from a planning perspective, not from regulating animals.
I guess one of my bosses came up to me one day and said, good fences make good neighbors.
Yep.
And ordinances and, our land use ordinance, nuisance ordinance, that is the fence. and it needs to be fair for both parties. So, I think that's one of my things, I want to be fair for both parties. The one that wants to be a farmer, and the next door that the family that's got the, 3-year-old kid.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got to have good fences. That's the whole thing about, all the laws we have.
I think Ben Franklin said that.
It could have been.
He just stole it.
I don't know. Something like that.
I think that's true about anything in the ordinance.
Okay.
You have to look at both sides of it. What,
You have to have some guidelines, and that's what these ordinances
If you
are all
don't,
about, that's what these
people will do it.
regulations are about. They're guidelines. We don't want to have to be reactive. Every time somebody says, this is a nuisance, I'm gonna make a complaint. Now we've got some guidelines, let's start with the guidelines and see where we are on your complaint. I think that's a good way to start.
I heard somebody on this, that's on the board, the county, but Fairview, saying that, that one, I don't want even on the council, on the planning board, that person should be able to do anything they want to do with their property. They own property, they should be able to do whatever they want to. And so on those lines, well, just do away with the zoning, let it go. But then you look at this nuisance ordinance here, and the first definition.
Oh, that's the current one. You need to go to
That's
the
the
draft.
current. Well,
let's go to the revised one.
all right, well, look at the first sentence there. I like to talk about what's been passed, though. I like to talk.
Current.
Sure. What we've done in the past, we hadn't talked about decreased property. It's unlawful, because of decreased property values and the unattractiveness and livability of neighborhoods. Now, we've got that unsightliness and decreased livability in the draft here. But now, how do you explain the ugly? I've heard this town say.
Subjective.
We don't,
I don't regulate it.
you don't regulate it ugly.
Can't,
How do you define ugly and unsightliness? What's the difference?
That on the corner up there,
That's a good
218 and,
Middle Grove Road.
Middle Grove Road, that's ugly and unsightly.
Oh, that's farm. That's farm, right?
There's my
We
point.
talked about
Well,
that.
now, the nuisance doesn't outline, that was one of my comments.
It says, it
This is
does too.
Regardless of the parcel.
Unsightliness,
size or
yes, it does. Sharon, it does too.
Fairview up there.
It says. you're-
Unsightliness, and that's
No,
unsightly.
what I was saying, no, I'm not disagreeing
Oh.
with that. I'm disagreeing, I'm just, clarifying for Josh that it doesn't matter if it's a farm, it's any parcel, it's any property. it's
But that's
any
not in the
size,
town of
any
Fairview,
location.
is it?
Yeah.
It is?
Yes, sir.
Well, wait, that's something needs to be done
Yeah,
about
we,
that.
I was gonna ask
Friends
about
with him,
that.
right?
I know him like I know you.
That's for a long time.
Well, not that one.
Ever since you've been
No,
here.
I know who he is, I know what he does. I don't necessarily agree with how he keeps his place.
Send him a letter.
It's not
I could send him a letter, but how I would regulate it, I.
Send him a copy of this
That's
and a
what I'm
letter
talking about,
back.
the nuisance ordinance, you're not gonna regulate it.
Said, and it's tough, it's tough. 90% of the people here will abide by the law.
Yes,
Without you, without, the 10% is the other problem.
Yeah, that's what we're here.
5% is the one I try to regulate, the other 10% I can't control.
Well,
So what we have is subjective. I think Doug put it, it's fences, it's some boundary that we can all accept and sort of try to live under.
But you're the zoning officer, right?
That's right.
And this is what it says. What? Unsightliness.
Okay.
Unattractive.
So you
They took that out of the draft.
Yeah, the draft is not in.
You could use this order for everybody to call and says, I'm getting tired of smelling
It
it.
says unsightly on page 18.
But common sense says that farmer is,
That's what you gotta use.
Unattractiveness, it's on both of them in one way, shape, form, or fashion.
A lot of it's common sense.
you're not gonna write out the common sense.
No.
And so we have a nuisance. If the rubber meets the road, we have a nuisance.
Then somebody has
And
to, somebody has to make the decision long term.
So you can't
by
enforce
the
it.
elected officials that approve this. So if you go out sending a bunch of letters, that's their ordinance that you're representing on their behalf.
That's correct.
So therefore, you're gonna be getting some phone calls from constituents on all these letters you're sending out. So there's a common sense there.
And they've got an appeal process. And don't
That's
forget
right.
the appeal process.
So you're not,
On any interpretation, they can go to an appeal process.
but I do
The
believe,
board makes that decision.
I do agree with you. 10% is what you worry about.
Always.
But I promise you, if you put the regulations here, they're gonna find a way around them. The fence, 150 foot, I think ought to be 10 foot. And I think we should not be regulating it. And I'll shut up.
Well, does anybody not know what Greg lives in? We understand, and you make a good point.
I just
I
think,
don't, we don't disagree with you.
I think you can farm.
Anybody else have any thing they'd like to say or comment?
Let me back to your drafting your nuisance ordinance, the penalty itself. When I read this, says punishable by a fine up to $200.
Wait a minute, that has been,
Page 22.
that has been changed.
Oh.
After the attorney looked at
Oh,
it.
yeah, the attorney looked at it and sent something today.
In fact, the violation, that's not even legal.
Which one is on penalty A?
Penalty A
Hey,
is violation shall constitute a class 3 misdemeanor, that is not valid anymore. So this, we just found out that today, so I want to do it.
All right.
And the
The appeal process, she recommended not to put in the ordinance.
Why?
Said this causes a lot of trouble.
Well, that's
Or
kind of,
paperwork.
oh,
Do I have to remind you of all the laws? It's not my responsibility. Should I?
well, to me, if you don't put that in there, my opinion is that we're not allowing people on both sides of that fence.
Oh, no.
To have-
Yes, ma'am.
Well, you
It's
just
the
said that
law.
you just said it was gonna be removed.
No, I said the residents of property owner shall appeal. We don't have to put that paragraph in there. The resident of the property owner has a right to appeal, but we don't have to have it in the ordinance. That's on any ordinance. We have a board of adjustment that hears appeals on all our ordinances.
I just hope that the 10% we're worried about don't come back and go, I've read your ordinance and I don't see anything in here about me having an appeal.
Did you ask anybody?
Yeah.
And I was surprised at that too. I would have left it in there.
Now, if the
That's just
10%,
her comment. We may still leave it in there.
the 5%, that's not going to perform no matter what do you do? You can't go out there and, what they used to do is, tar and feather.
Yeah.
You can't do that, but you like to.
What you do is an end resort, you take it to court. And your attorney just get on the docket and the judge does it. Now, if you mess with the judge, he gonna put you in jail.
Oh, I know.
If that's what you want to do, that's fine. That's up to you. But hopefully, that costs us a lot of money. We don't want to go that far unless we absolutely have to. And that's the reason the council makes that final decision. I have seen them make it stop right there, don't do anything else. Or take it to court.
Do we need to let them know that, that is a possibility?
That, who knows?
Anybody that's reading the ordinance at 5%, that we have written here, that there is a,
You think they gonna read
that
the
we have the right
ordinance?
to in order to take this to court. And that's just a way of saying, not being, I'm, going after you.
We don't put it in those terms. You're right. We don't say in the ordinance, if you don't do this, we'll take you to court.
No, you don't say that.
We don't
You
say
say
that.
that. If I have the
It's a
right,
violation and it's this, whatever, but we never say that for some reason.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. That may
I'm
be in
not,
the weeds,
yeah,
that may be in the weeds a little bit.
yeah, I know. That's what I do.
But it's about 7:30, I want to wrap it up,
Well, thanks for sharing the initial.
but the nuisance ordinance I thought was good, just to let you know what we try to do. It's not the best solution for anything. The best solution for anything is try to be considerate of your neighbor. Know your neighbor, look out for your neighbor. And the good book says, love your neighbor. Sometimes you can't do that. But people can work out problems if they just will. If your neighbor's doing something you don't like, have you ever talked to them about it? No, you don't do that. You just don't do it.
Do you tell the people?
It's just like we can't enforce the ordinances that we put out there.
Do you tell the people who's complaining? The 10%, you go to 10%, you tell your neighbor over there is complaining about your noise?
Am I going to tell who what now?
The
If
source
I
of the
go-
complaint.
The source of complaint, you go
No,
there,
not usually.
not usually, but sometimes.
Ask,
If they,
for public records.
if it's a public record request, yes.
Then write a letter.
If you make a complaint and I take your complaint as a complaint, whether it's written or in person or whatever, I validate it, it's a complaint. Then if I have any public record of that complaint and Josh asks for it, I have to give it to him. Everything in my office is public, theoretically.
But sometimes if people call me and complain and he says, well, I can write them a letter or but you know that they're gonna know who it came from. Half the time they'll say, oh, never
Forget about
mind.
it.
Always tell the people, now, I'm not gonna tell anybody who's complaining, but they'll know. And 99 out of 100 times, that's true.
And they'll say, forget it.
I've had people actually tell me they would be afraid to file a complaint because they know the history of the person. They're scared of it.
You back off then?
Huh?
You back off then?
They back off. Then I said, well, do you want to file the complaint or not? They said, no.
So it's
no.
clearly
I'm
illegal.
afraid.
You go out there and find out, he tells you what's going on, you say, that's fine.
If he doesn't want to make a complaint and he's his neighbor, I don't,
Now, then talk about, you find out that the complaint is valid, but the person who filed, telling you, they don't want their name mentioned. You just follow up.
no, I don't make a point to tell them who made the complaint. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying, you let something illegal keep going,
No,
You saw complaints yourself,
and-
you saw,
Here again, it's interpretation and there's a lot of things involved and it's subjective. And you have to weigh all the things. Have I figured out a way to correct the problem? Probably not yet, but I haven't forgot about it.
And plus, it's probably not your job to go enforce something that hasn't been made in form of complaint, is it? No.
that's not a question.
No, that wasn't the question. His question was, if I go and act on the complaint and they don't correct, do I just forget about it?
No, that wasn't his question.
No, his question was, if they don't file a complaint with you, do you go ahead even though you have
Oh,
knowledge of it?
if I see
go
one-
find out yourself?
Oh,
if
yeah, I
it's-
can.
If it's
I can.
valid.
You can't.
I don't have time to look for them. They're everywhere. I rode around today just for 15 minutes. I thought, that, rode by one house. I didn't believe the lady told me there is a camper built on the side of the house and somebody's living in it. I said, no, surely not.
You could.
Well, there is. Question is, how is that being worked with sewer? Is that legal? No, it's not legal. Our ordinance says you can't do that. They built a deck, So there's a lot of things that I'm gonna have to just deal with as I can because of the complexity and the number. But I'm
You
sure.
have You need some help.
That's, and the council did give me some, especially for the complicated ones. And that may be a complicated one you're referring to.
I think with the 90% that wants to comply, they just don't know. They don't even think about looking, and I don't know how we could do an educational program for the community.
They feel like, Josh, well, you know, it's my property. I can do anything I want to. I heard that the other day from an educated person. Nobody regulates property. It says every county except.
There are eminent domain?
Yeah, that's not regulation, that's taking.
Well,
No,
it's a regulation.
they call it taking though.
I've got,
Most counties have, all but one or two, have zoning regulations. You know, there's a couple counties that still don't have zoning regulations.
for the benefit of time,
Okay.
section 175, I'd like to make a motion to change the special setbacks for livestock and stable and poultry. Section 175A, except where livestock and poultry are kept on a bona fide farm that is exempt from regulation. Under this ordinance, no person shall keep livestock and poultry within 150 feet from any lot line of property owned by another. My motion is to change section 175A from 150 foot to our current setbacks, as Doug pointed out. That's my first motion.
Well, are you in the existing
Yeah.
livestock?
Page 4, yeah, page 4.
Okay, I'm sorry. It's hard for me to keep up. I've been working too long. I guess another question,
What was it?
The current, yes, I guess that motion for discussion at this point.
Okay.
Before I would do something like that, before I vote in favor of that, I would like to know how it affects property values. And that's got to come from somebody qualified to
That
give
would
it.
have to come from expert,
I mean, I'm not talking about the property that's changing, I'm talking about the neighbor's property.
and even that's subjective to some degree, even an
Well,
expert.
There's a form for that, I've studied this, I've done appraisals, but I'm not qualified. But I've done them.
Rob Morrison would be a good one.
It's a good one.
It is still subjective to a point.
Okay, well, like I said,
He's a good one. I'm not saying he's not a good one. He is a good one.
Yeah.
I've used him 100 times. But anyway,
now, if the intent of this meeting was to gather information so that you can actually compile and make changes to the ordinance?
suggestions from this committee, if they would like to make suggestions to the council, certainly can.
Yeah, we don't have to do it
We
tonight.
don't have to do it tonight. Should it be changed at all? Greg thinks it ought to be changed.
Yeah, I agree.
He's making the recommendation it should be. So do y'all all agree or not?
I think it should be changed, but I also think that there should be something that says that there's a certain distance from your neighbor's house. So that, you know, if you're right there, that, you know, he's not smelling the animal.
Well, his neighbor's house can be 15 feet from his property.
That's my point. So like the people that are right here on 218 that they have the little chicken tractor, I think that should be the 150 feet, it needs to be thrown out. But it does need to be at least 50 feet from his house so that he keeps it on his side of the.
Would that be
property.
consistent with anybody though? Would that be fair? In other words, some houses would be further away, some houses would be closer.
I
50
don't-
feet the right.
And that's why I'm saying I don't know what that distance is, but but the 150 needs to be thrown out.
I think, to Josh's point, I think the setbacks cover that. If you're set back 15 foot off the edge of the property, then it's 15 foot from his house or 30 foot. current front setbacks are 80, rear setbacks are 40.
They're both for.
Both for
Both for.
front and
So
rear.
you could, the back of your property from somebody's house is at least gonna be 120. From the
They live
back.
across the street. The problem is if you live next to you.
Side to side, you're
Technically,
still
if
at
it's
least
15 to
30.
15, it's 30 feet.
Yep.
And I'm saying that if you make that 50 feet, you got an additional 20 feet. And I mean, they can just do a little more around it or something. Yeah, I don't know.
So instead of like 15,
What is that?
25 on each.
That's-
How much money are we making on this? Is this for family, personal use? Because the small farmers are going. I mean, I used to
Well,
be a small farmer.
it was going. There is a huge outcry from the federal government and the state Department of Agriculture to promote, to get these young kids back into agriculture. Because we're losing them at a faster rate. I mean, we're turning farms into commercial I mean, it's not. So to your point, we're going back. The farmer of the future, as they called it in the 40s, is not, we're going back to small farming, from farm to table versus commercial agriculture.
Well, that'd be good, but I don't see it. I mean, when I was growing up, we had maybe 50 acres, big farm.
Yeah.
But that was my dad, and he worked at Carmen Patrol.
Yeah.
He just worked out, but it was a living bad,
Yeah.
He make a living out of it, and I don't see how, anybody can make a living on 50 acres now.
Oh, yeah, you
The one
can.
that's making my, farming my land now, he's got 300 acres in South Carolina,
Gotcha.
and that's the way he's.
So those farms turn into commercial businesses. I mean, and so you can make today's technology with electric fencing, with ropes. I mean, it's, the technology's there. The schools are training on pasture rotation, silver grazing. On a 10-acre piece of property, you can produce over $100,000 worth of income to that farm in a year. So what I'm saying, I mean, that's why I'm pushing so hard. I'm seeing this. My daughter's now 25, but when she was with the FFA at Piedmont, I thought she was gonna be a farmer. She's not, but she may, but I don't wanna eliminate opportunity for her or anybody else in the town of Fairview to be able to become a farmer. And small agriculture, small livestock production on small acres is the way farms are heading from family to table.
But not just farming, it's also, there's a huge push, especially after the pandemic, for homesteading.
Yep.
And there's a lot of people that are bailing out and going to here, Locust, Stanfield, to get away from the city. And get, and have their own. They saw what can happen to the food supply, and so that's why you go down there to Tractor Supply tomorrow morning, and they're gonna have a load of chickens, the little baby chickens come in, and they'll be gone by Thursday.
Oh, yeah, they won't make it for that afternoon. It's, so I guess my passion to this is that I don't want to restrict or eliminate any opportunities for new agriculture, or restrict anybody. What are we doing? 150 feet? Jeez.
It's animals we're talking about.
Mr. Chairman, I would suggest being the time, we got a motion on the floor.
I got a motion on the floor. I'd like to vote.
Recommendation to the council to change this
Yep.
ordinance.
Yep.
Is that what?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, we do have a motion to change the 150-foot line
So we
made
second.
to the setback. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Raise your hand.
Raise your hand.
1, 2, 3, 4.
All opposed? So it looks like the ayes have it.
So my instructions would be to take this before the council for a change in the ordinance.
My question is there any other paragraph here that the board feels like we should be changing? So one of the things I came up with question is the stables, for better word, stables where they actually have boarding up horses and do riding, training, teaching, horses, and actually do it's a physical therapy with the horses itself. That, if I remember correctly, was not part of the bona fide form as part of this ordinance. Should it be? And I know we're going on and on. So do we need to continue on with this discussion at another meeting to really examine, all the different paragraphs, see if we want to make some here?
Yeah, we need to change all of it at one time if we need to change some.
Yes.
So that's the only one we feel comfortable with changing, we do that. Or have to. If there are others, we want to do the whole thing at a time, one
Mr.
thing.
Chair, section 175, if it's going to remain, and we are going to continue to regulate livestock ordinances, I don't have any changes I'd like to change in section 175 with the one we just voted on.
Okay. Does anybody else on the board have any other changes they want to make?
We're talking about this one particular ordinance.
Yes, Fairview livestock ordinance.
My second motion, I don't have one. The second one is to do away with the livestock ordinance.
All right. Very good.
I can see where I was saying.
Okay. So, with that, take a minute and look over the meeting minutes for our last meeting from February the 21st. Any comments? Do I have a motion to accept the meeting minutes?
I got a question. This website and B, A and B, I don't remember that.
Yes.
We did?
We did, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir, we did. In fact, Ed did a good job explaining to what the website's on there and
Oh, yeah.
some of the different links for the payment.
Okay.
All right. Do I have a motion to accept the meeting minutes as presented here?
Yes.
Do I have a second? All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed, raise your hand. So, that is approved. So with that,
Public comment.
public comments. Yes, sir.
So I appreciate y'all, but I'm just as passionate as Greg. Is it Greg Morgan? I moved to Fairview because of what it is. And I think we need a new slogan that says we are a farm town. Because, me starting a row crop farm is dang near impossible. If you're not, born into it, you're not gonna row crop. So my only option is to do something on my land. And this is speaking for the whole community, I'm sure, for the most part, which is sad that these seats are completely empty. So shame on the community too. But, when they were building the drag strip at Charlotte Motor Speedway, well, after they built it actually, they were getting complaints from the new neighborhood behind it that there was too much noise. Well, why did you move next to a drag strip? I mean, that's my question. Why are you moving here if you don't like the smell of animals? If you don't like the smell of chicken poop when the farmers spread, why are you moving here? That's my question. It's pretty clear that we are what we are here, and I want to keep it that way. So, Greg, thank you. Thank y'all. Thank all of y'all.
What's your name?
I'm John.
John?
Yes, ma'am. John Brinson.
And yes, Greg, thank you for your comments and thoughts. Do appreciate it. We did listen to it too.
Yeah, I've talked a lot. It's encouraging to hear other folks in our community that are striving to become farmers or at least be a part of the agriculture.
Well, just teach our children, teach our kids, because you never know. It might get back to, like you said, to the old days back in the 40s when my great-grandparents were farming their land by hand, I mean, that is a thing, and that could be another thing, so why not teach them?
People want to know where their food comes from.
Yeah, it doesn't come from the grocery store.
You're kidding.
Thank you for your comment.
Harris Teeter? They don't raise cows. No pigs at Harris Teeter.
There's people that think that. Thank y'all.
Do I have a motion to adjourn tonight?
Motion to that.
Greg motions. Do we have a second? So with that, motion stand adjourned. Thank you very much for your time. There. Thanks, Greg.
Sorry.